Everyone knows and loves the lightsaber. It's an elegant weapon for a more civilized age, and one of the most iconic weapons in fictional history. But how do Jedi and Sith use their sabers? Today, I'd like to cover a few variants, forms, and abilities that don't fit neatly within the 7 core lightsaber forms. Form 0 was not an actual lightsaber form, but rather the concept that a Jedi should know when to use their weapon and when to find another way to solve a problem. Diplomacy, computer slicing, lockpicking, stealth, non-hostile force powers like the mind trick. Form Zero's very existence told Jedi to stop and think before drawing their weapon. Even after drawing their weapon, the very minimum of violence should be enacted, and taking a life should only even be considered if it will save more lives. As Raiden from the Metal Gear franchise said in Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance,
"There's a saying I like. One sword keeps another in the sheath. Sometimes the threat of violence alone is a deterrent. Sometimes by taking a life, others can be preserved. It's the code the samurai lived by."
Yoda had a quote from an anonymous warrior that he favored: "The best blades are kept in their sheaths." Jedi Master Kyle Katarn taught his students that the sight of a lightsaber, even when inactive, was often enough to make potential enemies more willing to cooperate. Jar Kai was the discipline of using 2 weapons at once, one in each hand. While this was used frequently by the Sith, the Jedi Order was a little more reluctant to employ Jar Kai, as it was seen as using 1 more weapon than should be carried, and 2 more than a true Jedi should really need, as Form 0 should be the ideal option for dealing with most, if not all, potential problems. It often incorporated a standard lightsaber in the wielder's dominant hand and a lightsaber shoto in the offhand, such as seen with Jedi Guardian Kavar and Ahsoka Tano in all of her Jar Kai styles throughout the years. From the Clone Wars, to her time approaching Order 66, where she used a pair of blue lightsabers, and even her time during the Empire and beyond with her dual white blades. Anakin Skywalker also briefly employed Jar Kai during his duel with Count Dooku on Geonosis, though he was far from an expert with it, and Dooku was able to easily destroy his second weapon. Dun Mok was the technique of throwing one's opponent off through distraction and self-doubt, usually through taunting during a lightsaber duel. It was a favorite technique of the Sith, demoralizing one's foe to weaken their defenses. The assassin droid HK-47 spoke of this to the Jedi exile Mitra Surik.
"When Jedi, or Sith, or whatever they call themselves, cannot be defeated with weapons, then use doubt. Doubt, Master, it has killed many Jedi, and it has killed many Sith. Make him doubt himself, his beliefs, or his intentions. Such things disrupt connections to the Force, and death soon follows."
By disrupting a foe's focus mid-fight, a combatant could make an opening that would be otherwise unobtainable, or break their foe's attention. A notable example of this is Mitra Surik's final duel with Sith Triumvirate member and Lord of Pain, Darth Sion, a Sith who had functionally mastered immortality by undermining his will and desire to keep fighting, so much so that he eventually abandoned his pain and let death take him, with a few final words.
"I'm glad to leave this place, at last."
Through Dun Mok, Mitra Surik was able to convince her foe to concede their duel, and given Sion's theoretically infinite stamina and ability to revive himself from the brink of death, it was a duel that would not have ended in her favor had she not eroded Sion's will. Telekinetic lightsaber combat was a blanket term for using the Force to wield a lightsaber at range. The most common example of this was the lightsaber throw, where the wielder threw their saber and spun it with the Force so that it would soar towards the enemy and ideally maim or kill them. There was, however, another version, utilized only by the most powerful of Force users, which was directly controlling 1 or more lightsabers with the Force to fight much the way a person would hold and swing a blade. The most notable practitioner of this was the Sith Triumvirate member and Sith Lord of Betrayal, Darth Traya, who, after her hands were cut off, resorted to wielding 3 purple-bladed lightsabers with the Force alone. In her later years, Ahsoka Tano was also able to manipulate her sabers telekinetically in a limited capacity, such as seen in the Ahsoka show, where she used her sabers to cut a hole in the floor beneath her. Mounted lightsaber combat was, as the name suggests, a specialized style of lightsaber use while on a mount, either a living, organic mount such as a tauntaun, or a mechanical mount such as a speeder bike. As the rider would need one hand on the controls, mounted combat specialized in the use of a single hand to wield one's lightsaber, incorporating low sweeps and stabs to hit enemies below the rider. SOCON was a principle of lightsaber combat that centered on using the environment itself to gain a tactical advantage in battle. The most iconic use of this, of course, is
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
where Obi-Wan moved to higher, more solid ground, granting him better footing and elevation over his opponent. Maul also used Sokan during his duel against Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi by using the Theed reactor energy shields to separate the two Jedi so he could fight them one-on-one. Trisp Zest was a specialized lightsaber style developed by Karis, a member of the Sky Tree species who possessed wings capable of flight. Trisp Zest, which meant heart palpitation in the Skytrick language, was designed to take advantage of the user's ability to fly, gaining a massive tactical advantage over grounded opponents. Trickata was a lightsaber technique that took advantage of the lightsaber's ability to turn on and off, something which traditional swords couldn't do. In simple terms, Trickata involved turning the saber off and turning it back on to confuse an opponent or to bypass their guard entirely. Neither the Jedi nor the Sith made much use of Trickata. The Jedi thought it was unsportsmanlike and unfair, while the Sith believed it to be a sign of weakness and a lack of power. While both orders frowned upon it, there are a handful of known practitioners, most notably Darth Treya, who had a different set of ideals than most Sith. There were a few named training styles as well. Dulon referred to a solo lightsaber training exercise where the student practiced sequences of moves against imaginary opponents and was intended to help students get a better feel for how their lightsaber moved in combat. Sabine Wren did something similar to this in the Ahsoka show, training against the Jedi droid Hu Yang's illuminated holograms so Sabine could have visible targets to refine her saber precision even without using a real lightsaber.
Set! Kire! Kise! Gaiki! Kise! Kire! Gaiki! Gaiki! Set! Yoki! Yate!
The exercise known as velocities consisted of a student working through attack and parry patterns either with a mentor or a peer, constantly increasing the speed until one got hit or yielded.
Remember the forms Ezra taught you. Take ready position. We'll start slow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Faster. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
The Twin Suns, not to be confused with the crime organization of the same name, was an ancient sparring technique where two Jedi used the Force to rise and land, resembling two suns crossing the sky. In Twin Suns, two Jedi stood at opposite ends of a large open space, then ran at each other and used the Force to jump towards their opponents. While in midair, the Jedi activated their lightsabers, and as they passed each other, they struck at one another, trying to cut a piece of their opponent's clothing without actually cutting their opponent, and then deactivated their sabers before touching the ground. Follo's cadences were a series of training exercises developed by the Jedi Master Vorin Follow and involved setting Durasteel ball bearings on top of wax candles and striking the ball bearings without hitting the candles themselves. This was done to hone precision and the Jedi's ability to sense their surroundings. There were 5 cadences in total, each ramping up the number of candles and ball bearings. The first cadence used 19 candles, spaced at 10-degree intervals in a half circle in front of the duelist. It used 190 ball bearings, replacing the destroyed balls until none remained. This cadence usually took about an hour to complete. The second cadence used 72 candles at 5-degree intervals in a full circle, and while the goal was the same, strike the ball bearings without touching the candles, the duelist was now not allowed to turn to face each candle, further focusing their control and spatial awareness. 2,701 ball bearings were required, and the cadence took about 2 hours. The third cadence used 180 candles at 2-degree intervals around the duelist in a full circle. The goal this time was to strike every 5th ball bearing without turning, which helped teach irregular attack patterns from all sides. 16,290 ball bearings were used for this, and it took about 3 hours. The fourth cadence used 360 candles at 1-degree intervals, but unlike the previous cadences, did not use ball bearings. Instead, the objective was to strike each candle in a specific order determined by a mathematical formula. This sharpened the duelist's composure and ability to think quickly in the heat of battle. It took about 3 hours. Finally, the fifth cadence was not a teaching exercise, but a test for oneself. It required the duelists to telekinetically wield their lightsaber, performing intricate sequences to test their physical, mental, and sensory precision and control. It took around 3 hours. Padawans who mastered Follow's cadences while blindfolded were exempt from the trial of skill, which I'll cover next. The Jedi trials were a series of tests that Padawans took to prove that they were ready to become Jedi Knights. There were a total of 5: skill, courage, flesh, spirit, and insight. For our purposes today, I will only cover the trial of skill, but if there's enough interest, I can make a video on all the trials. The trial of skill tested a Padawan's skill with different lightsaber techniques and acrobatic and force feats, such as levitating objects in the middle of storms. As the Jedi Order refined the Jedi trials, however, the trial of skill shifted to a focus on facing an adversary, such as Obi-Wan Kenobi's trial of skill being completed by his defeat of Maul on Naboo. When a flesh and blood foe could not be found, the Order created training simulacra from archived data on the Sith or other skilled combatants. Another option that was occasionally used was a display of great feats of skill with the Force, such as manipulating perception or altering the environment in the test chamber. Thanks for watching! While the topics I covered today aren't actually lightsaber forms, I felt them relevant enough that they should be included in my series on the various forms, as they are rather integral to the use of the lightsaber. If you enjoyed what you just watched, there's more on the way, so please consider giving the video a like and subscribing. It takes 2 seconds for you and it really helps the channel out. See you in the next one!